The shift, the lobby didn't welcome them with the usual cold stillness. The air was different, denser, as if someone had stirred it recently, waking dust that still drifted faintly in unsettled waves across the marble. Something had passed through here, something that didn't belong. Leo whispered, "Mom, someone's been inside." She didn't correct him. He was right. The chandelier fragments still hung overhead, but the delicate crystals seemed tilted, shifted by a breeze that shouldn't exist. The piles of rubble looked subtly rearranged. Even the faint trail of dust that usually covered the floor was interrupted in places by strange patterns. Half footprints, dragged impressions, something too indistinct to name. Elena gripped Leo's shoulder. "Stay close to me." He nodded. They stepped past the reception counter, flashlight beams cutting slowly across the hall. Elena's heart pounded in a slow, steady rhythm, trying to match the cadence of her breath. The casino's silence felt crowded now, not empty, like a room full of people holding their breath in the dark. When they reached the corridor leading to the lounge, Elena stopped cold. The hatch, the hidden steel hatch they had uncovered beneath the tiles. It was open, not wide, just a crack, but enough to reveal a darkness deeper than anything the flashlight could reach. Elena's pulse sharpened, Leo's breath hitched. Someone had found it, or someone had forced it. Elena knelt slowly, her fingers brushing the metal edge. It was warm, warm. The hatch to the underground had never been warm before. It had always been cold as a tomb. Now, the faint heat radiating from it pulsed unnervingly against her skin. Leo crouched beside her. "Mom, did you open it yesterday?" She shook her head. "No, we closed it. I remember the sound of it sealing shut." "Then who?" A sudden noise answered him, a soft clatter deeper in the lounge. Metal against tile, not loud, not rushed. Someone was inside. Elena slowly rose to her feet, her heartbeat thickening, slowing, sharpening. The flashlight beam trembled slightly as she swung it toward the lounge. The air in the hallway felt colder now, despite the warmth rising from the opened hatch. It wrapped around her like fingers trailing up her arms, urging her to stop, urging her to turn back, but Elena couldn't. Not now. Whoever, or whatever, was here, she had to face it before it found something she hadn't meant to expose. She stepped quietly into the lounge. The room lay in semi-darkness, the smell of burnt fabric heavy in the air. Ash fluttered with the movement of her footsteps. The sealed steel door stood at the far end, unchanged, but the wall around it carried new streaks, long, dark smears scratched across the soot, as though something had been dragged. Elena's breath stilled. Leo's grip tightened around her sleeve. "Mom," he whispered, "someone is trying to open it." Not someone, something. She forced her gaze away from the smears and followed the faint trail of disturbed ash across the floor. Her light caught the glint of something small near the collapsed booth at the edge of the room. A crowbar, her crowbar, the one she had used to pry open the sealed wall. It lay on its side, dust brushed off its edges. Someone had picked it up. Someone had tried to use it. Elena bent slowly, lifting it with shaking fingers. The metal felt wrong in her hand, warmer than the air, as though freshly held but recently discarded. Leo's voice trembled. "He's been in here." "Not he," Elena whispered. "We don't know who." But the thought chilled her bones, because if someone had entered the casino in the night, they could have easily followed them home. Watched them, waited, or worse, maybe they had never left the casino at all. Elena scanned the room again. That was when she saw it. A new footprint in the ash, large, deep, wrong, a shape too long, too heavy, too uneven to be human, like someone dragging a foot behind them, or pulling something immense. Leo's eyes filled with fear. "Mom, that wasn't there yesterday." "I know," she whispered. The room suddenly felt too tight, too dangerous, too alive. She grabbed Leo's hand. "We're leaving, now." But as they turned toward the hallway, Elena felt something, a cold draft drifting up from the open hatch, carrying an unmistakable scent. Heat, smoke, and something metallic, fresh. Wet? Leo froze mid-step. Mom, do you smell that? She didn't answer, because the scent told her a truth she never wanted to face. What waited in the sublevel wasn't sleeping. It wasn't trapped. It wasn't gone. It was moving. It was rising. It was already on its way up. As the casino's air thickened, Elena realized that the sealed vault wasn't the only danger beneath the ruins. Someone else was searching for it, and they were already one step ahead of her. The moment Elena smelled the metallic sting rising from the open hatch, her instincts shifted from curiosity to survival. It wasn't the stale cold they'd felt before. This was different. It carried heat, fresh heat, mixed with the unmistakable tang of metal scraped too hard, too recently. And beneath it lurked something sharper, something almost copper-like, something that shouldn't have been there. She gripped Leo's hand tighter. "Don't look down," she whispered, but Leo had already inhaled too deeply, his face tightening in alarm. "Mom, something's climbing up," he said, voice trembling. Elena didn't wait for confirmation. She backed away from the hatch, pulling Leo with her, keeping her eyes fixed on the jagged seam in the floor. The darkness below felt heavier now, a breathing void, alive, shifting, impatient. Dust trickled upward as though pulled by a current rising from below. Leo whispered, "Mom, we have to run." "We will," she breathed, but not blind. She lifted the flashlight, angling the beam toward the edges of the hatch opening. But the darkness swallowed the light in a way that made her skin crawl. It didn't scatter. It didn't reflect. It swallowed. As if something down there absorbed light instead of being revealed by it. A faint metallic tap echoed from below, then another, closer, deliberate, the same pattern they'd heard behind the sealed door. But no longer distant, no longer muffled. This time it carried upward with intent, as if whatever made that sound wanted them to know it was coming. Elena's heart hammered. She moved backward, guiding Leo around the far side of the lounge, avoiding the deeper shadows. But the casino didn't protect them. It twisted around them. As she reached the hallway, Elena froze. Something had changed. The thick layer of dust in the corridor, usually undisturbed except by their own footprints, was streaked with a new path. A long, smooth drag that cut straight through the center of the hall like a wound. It curved toward the lounge, toward the hatch, as if someone had carried something heavy and formless from another part of the building and abandoned it here. Leo saw it too. "Mom, that drag wasn't here when we came in." "No," she whispered, "it wasn't." Her breath turned shallow. Someone had been inside. Someone had walked this hall. Someone had left the hatch open. And someone had dragged something back toward the sealed steel door. She felt the casino watching her, pressing against her thoughts, urging her to understand the danger she now stood inside. A sudden scraping sound echoed from the hatch behind them, a quick, sharp, metallic rasp that jolted Elena forward. She spun around just as a gust of air rushed upward from the depths, carrying a faint rattle of chains. Leo's hand crushed hers. "Mom, don't look," she said again, but she couldn't tear her own eyes away. She listened. A heavy breath rose from beneath the hatch, not human, not mechanical, a thick exhale of heat against cold air. Then silence for a moment. She thought whatever lurked below had stopped moving, but then a soft thud, another, and another, each one climbing. Elena's fear sharpened into something clearer. She pulled Leo forward, forcing her steps to remain controlled. "We're getting out of here, slowly. Don't run unless I say so." Leo nodded, though his small body trembled with each step. They moved back into the main lobby, where pale daylight filtered through the broken windows. Elena breathed deeply, her lungs desperate for clean air. But when they reached the front doors, she stopped dead. The doors were open, wide open. They had not left them that way. Wind rushed inside, stirring debris into spiraling eddies. The casino's lobby felt exposed, vulnerable, as though someone had invited the outside world in for the first time in decades. Leo's voice broke into a fearful whisper. "Mom, did someone leave?" Elena didn't answer. She didn't dare, because the footprints in the dust were wrong. They trailed from the entrance, inward, not outward, and they weren't hers. They weren't Leo's. They weren't the warped shape she'd seen in the lounge. These prints were large, heavy, but unmistakably human, boots, fresh, new, a second threat, not from below, from above. Someone else had entered the casino last night or early that morning. Someone who had discovered the hatch. Someone who had started searching for the same secret she and Leo were trying to uncover. Someone who walked deep enough into the ruins to leave those drag marks and try to pry open the sealed steel door. Elena felt her pulse spike. Two dangers, one below, one above. Leo tugged her sleeve. "Mom, who is it?" Elena breathed slowly, trying to keep her fear sharp and useful. "I don't know," she whispered. "But someone wants what's down there, and they're willing to go deeper than we thought." She moved toward the open doors, stepping into the light. The desert air hit her face, cool and immediate. She scanned the parking lot. A fresh set of tire tracks cut across the dirt, large, mud still wet, recent. Someone had come here while she was away, and someone had watched the casino long enough to slip inside before she arrived. Leo pressed into her side. "Mom, we're not the only ones looking for the vault." "No," she whispered, "we're not." Her eyes drifted back to the casino, dark, hollow, trembling with secrets too old to stay silent, and she felt the truth settle into her bones. Someone was ahead of them, watching them, following their progress, and the thing rising from below was no longer the only threat. The danger now had a human face, and humans, she knew, were far more unpredictable. As the wind swept through the open doorway, whipping dust across her feet, Elena realized the race for the vault had already begun, and she and Leo were no longer searching alone. Someone else was hunting. Someone who didn't want to share what waited in the dark. By the time Elena returned to the casino the next morning, the sky above the desert was a bruised wash of gray, the kind that promised a storm without ever delivering one. The air felt charged, restless, as if the entire landscape anticipated what she was about to face. She stepped out of the car slowly, scanning the wide stretch of dust and cracked earth around her. Every shape, every shadow felt like it carried intention. The casino stood at the center of it all, dark and skeletal against the horizon, its jagged silhouette resembling a fortress hiding something it could no longer contain. Elena felt its presence before she took her first step. It was different today, alive in a way she hadn't sensed since the knocking behind the steel door. Leo stayed home this time, she made sure of it. After what she saw in Chapter 7's final hours, the human footprints, the drag marks, the open hatch, the heat rising from below, Elena understood the truth. Whatever was happening inside this casino had crossed the boundary between curiosity and danger, and she would not risk Leo stepping 1 inch closer to it. She checked the crowbar, tightened her gloves, and slipped the flashlight into her pocket. Her breath came out slow, steady, controlled. She had one goal now: open the vault. Reveal what Victor Laskin died protecting, and stay one step ahead of whoever was hunting the same truth. As the lobby doors groaned open under her hand, Elena felt the casino breathe around her. Dust rose in slow spirals under the pale beam of morning light. The chandelier fragments chimed softly overhead, stirred by a breeze that didn't come from outside. She stepped inside, cautious and deliberate. The front lobby bore new signs of intrusion. The footprints from the previous day were deeper now, overlapping more heavily, trailing in several directions. Someone had moved fast, and someone had carried weight, but no bodies, no blood, no sign of struggle. This wasn't desperation. This was methodical. She swallowed. Whoever had broken in wasn't wandering aimlessly. They were searching, hunting, digging for the vault. Elena followed the footprints toward the west corridor, her heart beating a steady, heavy rhythm. The hallway felt colder now. Ash from the burnt wallpaper drifted like gray feathers under each step she took. The lights from her flashlight carved long shadows across the walls, stretching them into crooked, trembling shapes. When she reached the lounge, she stopped in the doorway. Something had changed, and violently. The sealed steel door looked different. The soot surrounding it had been disturbed, smeared into chaotic streaks. Deep gouges clawed through the blackened plaster, as though someone, or something, had tried to tear through the barrier with brute force. Elena moved closer, her breath catching. Fresh dents bruised the metal surface. 4, sharp, deep, unlike any tool mark a human could make. She reached out and touched one gently. The metal was ice, cold beneath her fingertips, but that wasn't what stole her breath. It was what lay on the ground below the door. A glove, a black, heavy, duty work glove, torn across the palm, still warm, her stomach twisted. The human intruder, the one who had tried to get into the vault, the one who had prowled the casino at night. They had stood right here. They had fought with something, or someone, over this door, and they had dropped this glove in the struggle. Elena stepped back, exhaling through trembling lips. The casino seemed to close in around her, its walls drawing tighter, absorbing her fear like it had done to countless visitors long ago. She turned slowly toward the far wall, scanning the debris with a sharper eye. That was when she saw marks, not footprints, not drag lines, but something worse, scorch lines, thin black streaks across the floor, fresh, sharp, and jagged, leading from the sealed door toward the corner of the lounge. Elena crouched to touch one. The moment her fingertips brushed it, a static jolt snapped up her hand. She yanked back with a startled gasp. The scorch line was warm, warm. The vault door hadn't just been forced. It had burned, reactivated, awakened. Elena rose quickly, pulse pounding. She followed the scorch lines to the far wall, and froze. The hatch she had closed, the hatch she had sealed. It was open. Again. Only this time, the metal lid lay fully pushed aside, as though kicked or thrown with tremendous force. Heat poured upward from the dark opening, stronger now, smelling faintly of oil and something metallic. Something recent, something alive. Elena stepped toward it slowly, each footfall deliberate. She forced herself to look down, to face the truth she feared more than anything. The ladder was illuminated by a dim red glow rising from below. Not fire, not sunlight, not reflections. This was artificial, old, weak, but real. Something underground had power. Something underground had light. Something underground had been activated. Her breath trembled out. The vault wasn't dead. The vault wasn't sealed. The vault wasn't abandoned. It was. Online, Elena leaned carefully over the edge, shining her flashlight downward. The beam vanished into a long shaft, the red glow pulsing faintly against the walls like a heartbeat. Then a sound drifted upward, slow, steady, mechanical, like gears turning for the first time in years. Elena staggered back. The vault was opening itself, or someone had started to open it. A tremor rolled through the floorboards, small but unmistakable. Dust shook loose from the ceiling, falling in soft clouds around her. The casino groaned deep in its bones, as though awakening after decades of sleep. Elena pressed a hand to her chest, steadying her breath. She wasn't imagining it. The vault was coming to life, and she wasn't alone in the casino. As the red glow deepened, illuminating the hatch like the mouth of an ancient furnace. Elena felt the truth settle cold and heavy beneath her ribs. Someone else was already inside the vault, and whatever they awakened was beginning to rise. As the faint mechanical hum grew louder from the depths below, Elena realized the vault wasn't just opening, it was calling, and every moment she hesitated was one more moment the danger beneath the ruins gained strength. The humming rose from beneath the hatch like a warning pulse, slow, steady, and ancient. Elena stood at the edge of the opening, the red glow from below illuminating her face in ghostly lines. For years, the hidden vault had slept under tons of concrete and ash. For years, silence had ruled its corridors. But now the deep machinery groaned awake, gears scraping against rusted pathways, lights flickering back to life like dying stars drawing one last breath. Something had triggered the vault. And it wasn't her. A tremor rippled through the lounge floor. Dust rained down from the charred ceiling in delicate bursts. The metal hatch frame vibrated faintly beneath her hand, shivering as though aware of the danger rising below. Elena pulled her hand back sharply. The vault wasn't just a room. It wasn't just a secret. It was a machine, a system, a self-contained world built to hide something Victor Laskin hadn't wanted anyone to find. And now it had woken. She forced herself to breathe, her knees tightening against the instinct to run. Not yet. Not until she understood what she faced. She aimed her flashlight down the shaft once more. The red glow pulsed deeper in the darkness, breathing in slow, rhythmic intervals, not random, not failing circuitry, timed, deliberate, like a heartbeat. Elena staggered back, the crowbar slipping from her fingers and clattering across the tiles with a metallic echo. The sound was swallowed by the casino's thick air, absorbed like a secret it couldn't afford to let escape. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest, willing her pulse to settle. Then she heard it, a new sound. Soft, thin, a faint metallic clinking rising from the ladder, climbing the rungs one slow tap at a time. Tap, 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 not footsteps, not climbing, like something brushing against the ladder as it moved below. Elena's breath stilled entirely. Someone was down there, someone was moving, someone was ascending. She stepped back instinctively, her hand flying to the flashlight switch. She dimmed the beam quickly, bringing the room into softened shadow. The red light from below glowed stronger now, filling the edges of the lounge with an eerie reddish pulse. Tap, 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 closer, no longer echoing faintly, no longer muffled. It climbed the lower rungs, one metallic scrape at a time. Elena's voice thinned into silence. She grabbed the crowbar, gripping it tightly in both hands even though the metal felt slick with fierce, wet. Another sound rose from below, a sharp inhale of heated air, a stuttered mechanical sigh, and then a faint clang like something being unlatched. Elena froze. Whoever opened the vault hadn't come alone. A sudden gust of hot air surged up the shaft, pushing dust outward in a swirling burst. The red glow flickered violently once, twice, then steadied. It had the unsettling rhythm of a machine rebooting. Elena backed farther away. Her shoulder struck a collapsed booth, sending a soft avalanche of charred upholstery falling to the ground. The sound echoed too loudly. She cursed under her breath. Below, the tapping paused. A long moment stretched across the room. Heavy, fragile, suffocating, until Elena could feel her heartbeat pounding against her ribs like fists searching for escape. Then a voice drifted upward, a voice she didn't recognize, a man's voice, weak, hoarse, struggling. Hold, still, don't move. Elena's blood ran cold. Not Victor, not anyone she had heard on the testimonies. A stranger, a living stranger. Someone was already in the sublevel, someone alive, someone close to the vault. She moved slowly toward the hatch, her breath shallow. She angled the flashlight downward again, careful not to let the beam touch the ladder. only the wall beside it. For the first time, she saw motion, a shadow, broad, human, someone climbing the ladder, body shaking with effort, one hand dragging something that scraped against metal. Elena's pulse spiked as the figure reached the midsection of the ladder. He wore a torn dark jacket, his fingers shaking uncontrollably as he pulled himself upward. Blood ran down his knuckles, fresh, stark against the red glow. His head hung low, hair matted, breath ragged. He looked like he'd been fighting something, or running from it. He didn't look like a man searching for riches. He looked like a man fleeing hell. He lifted his head slightly, his voice cracking through the rising hum. "Don't stay. Don't. Let it." His foot slipped, catching on a rung. He groaned sharply. Something below dragged metal again. Closer this time. Elena staggered back instinctively. "Too late," he gasped. A new sound rose from below, a sound Elena had never heard before, a sound that didn't belong to a machine or a man, a deep, resonant groan like metal bending, like stone cracking, like breath building inside something colossal. The man's head jerked upward, eyes wide with terror. "Run," that one word sliced through Elena's paralysis. She turned and the entire casino shook. A heavy tremor rippled beneath her feet. The chandelier fragments rattled violently overhead. Dust poured from the rafters in thick clouds. Elena sprinted toward the hallway, crowbar clutched tightly, legs trembling beneath her. She didn't dare look back, not at the hatch, not at the shadow climbing it, not at the thing rising behind him. The casino moaned in its bones, ancient beams groaning under the force of something waking. Elena reached the corridor, stumbling over debris. She grabbed the wall for balance as another tremor rolled through the floor. She heard the man scream, far away, then closer, then a sudden, brutal silence. The red light below flickered wildly, then steadied, then rose up the shaft like a living flame. Elena pushed herself toward the lobby, lungs burning, heart pounding hard enough to drown out every other sound. She didn't stop until she reached the front doors. One breath, two, three. She turned back. The casino was quiet again, too quiet, like something had gone still, listening. Whatever had awakened below was no longer content to stay hidden. It was rising, it was hunting, it was coming. As Elena stepped into the open air, the casino behind her pulsed with faint red light from its broken windows, like a creature blinking awake after a long, starved sleep. Elena didn't sleep that night, not after what she had seen, not after hearing a stranger scream into the hollow throat of the casino's underbelly, followed by that impossible silence, followed by the vault's red glow rising like a heartbeat crawling up from the dead. She sat alone at the kitchen table long after midnight, elbows on the wood, hands trembling against her temples. Every window felt like an eye. Every shifting shadow felt like a breath, not her own. And the worst part wasn't the scream. It was the last thing the stranger managed to tell her. Don't let it. He hadn't been warning her about treasure. He hadn't been warning her about a man. He'd been warning her about something. Something down there had woken. Something that drove a grown man into a panic so visceral, he almost clawed his way up the ladder with his bare hands. Something not meant to be touched. Elena stared at the blueprints spread across her table, the lines and notes swimming in her tired vision. She traced the hidden annex again, the sublevel, the sealed chamber, Victor Laskin's fortress beneath a fortress. She whispered to the empty room, "What did you do, Victor?" No answer came, but the walls felt colder. Leo slept on the couch in the living room, exhaustion finally pulling him under after hours of questions she didn't dare answer. She watched his small chest rise and fall, the gentle rhythm grounding her. But then something new, something she hadn't felt before, the faintest vibration under her feet, so subtle she almost dismissed it as her imagination, until it fluttered again and again, like a soft thump pulsing through the foundation of her home. Her breath hitched. She pressed her palm to the floorboard. It vibrated faintly, not constant, not mechanical, a pattern, thump, 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 thump. Her blood ran cold, not random, not settling pipes. Knocking, the same pattern the vault had given her from behind the steel door. It had followed her home. Elena shot to her feet, lungs tightening. She rushed to Leo and scooped him into her arms. He stirred, blinking sluggishly, confusion clouding his face. "Mom," he whispered, "we're leaving," she said sharply, grabbing her keys with one shaking hand, her voice trembling as the floor vibrated again beneath them. Leo's eyes widened. He clung to her, suddenly awake, suddenly aware. "It's here," she didn't answer. Some truths needed no words. They rushed to the car, the porch steps creaking beneath their weight. The wind outside whipped against her, stinging her face. She fumbled with the keys before finally sliding into the driver's seat, locking the doors and starting the engine. Her house sat behind her, dark, silent, watching, but underneath the silence, the faint vibrations continued, like distant footsteps walking circles beneath the earth. Elena gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles paled. But she didn't drive away, not yet, because the next question burned through her fear. If the vault was waking, if something had escaped, if someone else was hunting the treasure, then she needed the one thing she didn't yet have, Victor Laskin's voice. The testimonies hinted at something, the photos hinted at more. But they weren't enough, not for what she faced now. She needed to know what Victor himself said in his final hours, the recordings, the rumors, the tapes Victor supposedly left behind. She turned to Leo. "We're not going far, but we're not staying here." Leo nodded without fear this time, just understanding. Elena drove to the only place in town no one ever visited after dark, the old sheriff's annex, now abandoned except for storage. But not empty. Inside those files, she knew, were the confiscated items from the Laskin investigation, testimonies, evidence, and if the rumors were true, Victor's final confession. She parked under the dim street lamp, the building looming ahead like a silent witness. Leo gripped her sleeve tightly as they stepped out, the gravel crunching underfoot. The annex door resisted at first, but years of rust gave way under Elena's shoulder. The stale smell of old paper and dust washed over them. Leo wrinkled his nose, but stayed close. Rows of filing cabinets stretched like steel tombstones across the room. One cabinet bore a crooked label, "Laskin Case Materials, Confidential." Elena's breath hitched. She opened the drawer. Inside lay cassette tapes, some in plastic bags, others loose with handwritten titles. She sifted through them until her fingers brushed the label that froze her in place. VL Final Session Unreleased. Her heart pounded once, hard, then steadied. This was it. The truth Victor hadn't lived to tell the world. She grabbed the portable recorder the archivist had loaned her earlier that week, popped in the tape and pressed play. For a moment, just static. Long empty static, then a crackle, a breath, a man's voice, trembling and uneven. "Victor Laskin, if anyone finds this, then they finally did it. They found the vault." Elena's spine stiffened. "It isn't money. It was never about money, not at first. It was about protection, about hiding something that should have been destroyed." Leo stayed silent, eyes wide. Victor inhaled shakily on the recording. "Someone helped me build it. Someone who shouldn't have existed in my world. Someone who taught me how to seal it, how to feed it, how to keep it quiet. Feed it." Elena's skin prickled. "But I made a mistake. I got greedy, and greed always calls to the thing down there, always." A loud bang echoed in the recording. Victor's startled voice shaking violently. "If you're hearing this, don't open it. Don't let it rise. It knows the sound of hunger, it knows the smell of fear, and it knows that if the door wakes. He paused. A wet breath, a low groan in the background, metal bending. Victor whispered the final words like a man confessing to a grave. It knows the way out. The tape cut off. Silence rushed in. Elena's hand trembled so violently the recorder slipped and clattered against the floor. Victor hadn't built a vault to hide riches. He had built a prison, and the thing inside had learned how to listen, how to breathe, how to wait. Leo whispered, barely audible, "Mom." What did he mean, feed it? Elena stepped back toward the door, her breath cold in her throat. Because she finally understood the truth behind the steel door, behind the sublevel, behind the stranger's scream. Victor hadn't been running from a crime. He had been running from his creation. And as the wind howled outside the sheriff's annex, Elena knew the vault was no longer waking. It was remembering, and whatever Victor had sealed away was hungry for more than silence. The recorder lay on the floor where it fell, the tape still spinning in a soft mechanical whir, as if Victor Laskin's final breath hadn't yet finished echoing through the room. Elena didn't move. She couldn't. Her pulse sat frozen somewhere between her throat and her spine, squeezing tight enough to hurt. Leo stood a step behind her, his small hand clutching the fabric of her jacket, eyes locked on the recorder like it might speak again. "Feed it," the words scraped across her mind like the edge of a dull blade. Victor hadn't been a man hiding money. He'd been a man hiding fear. And now she knew why he'd sealed the door with more steel than the casino itself was built from. He wasn't protecting a fortune. He was protecting the world outside of it. She knelt slowly, picking up the recorder with shaking fingers. The device felt colder than the room, cold enough to seep into her bones. When she turned it off, the silence that followed wasn't simple silence. It was weight, pressure, a thickness that settled onto her shoulders, reminding her that she had crossed a line she could never uncross. Leo pulled weakly at her sleeve. "Mom, what was he scared of?" The question broke her, not because she had no answer, but because she did. "Elena." Leo whispered again, voice trembling. "Is it alive?" The floorboards creaked beneath them. A soft groan of timber shifting to the rhythm of the storm winds outside. But to Elena, every tiny noise now sounded like breath, like movement, like something beneath the surface of the earth dragging itself closer. She swallowed hard. "We're not talking about that here," she said, forcing her voice steady. "We leave, now." She stuffed the tape into her bag, grabbed Leo's hand, and guided him toward the annex's exit. The building felt even emptier now, as if something had fled the room at the same moment they had learned the truth. Dust hung in the air like ash. The fluorescent lights flickered weakly overhead, buzzing in a frantic, uneven pulse. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. Clouds pressed low across the desert sky, heavy and bruised, as if the land itself sensed something rising beneath its crust. Elena helped Leo into the car, her mind racing. She needed to think, she needed to prepare, but the truth pressed against her temples with brutal certainty. Whatever Victor trapped inside that vault, whatever he fed, whatever he feared, it wasn't dead. And now, because someone else had opened the hatch, it wasn't locked in either. Elena gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale. Leo leaned toward her, voice barely a whisper. "What are we going to do?" For a long moment, she didn't speak. She stared straight ahead, breathing slow, trying to find balance in the hurricane tightening inside her chest. "We're going back," she said finally, "to the casino." Leo gasped softly. "But why?" "Because someone opened that vault," Elena whispered, "and they don't know what they awakened."